The Devourer fleet arrived 18 months early, their massive forms blotting out the stars as they emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Marcus watched from the bridge of the human battleship Defiance, the sword humming with power at his side as he observed an enemy force that defied comprehension. Over 800 ships filled the void between Mars and Jupiter, each one a nightmare of adaptive technology and devastating firepower. The smallest vessels were the size of city blocks, while the flagship stretched nearly 50 kilometers from bow to stern. They moved with perfect coordination, like schools of mechanical fish swimming through the darkness. But Marcus Chen was no longer the frightened 15-year-old who had stumbled across an ancient weapon in a forgotten bunker. In the year since capturing the Devourer infiltrator, he had grown into something unprecedented in human history, a warrior who commanded respect from both his own species and alien allies across the galaxy. The evidence from the captured ship had finally convinced Earth's leaders that the threat was real. More importantly, the sword's power had proven that the enemy could be fought and defeated. Military leaders from every nation had put aside their differences to prepare for humanity's greatest battle, while scientists worked frantically to understand and replicate ancient technology. Marcus had also succeeded in his quest to find other ancient weapons. Guided by the Stellar Cleaver's knowledge, he had recovered artifacts from hidden vaults on worlds throughout the sector. The Shield of Infinite Recursion now protected Admiral Sarah Chen, his older sister who commanded humanity's primary battle fleet. The Spear of Solar Fire was wielded by Colonel James Morrison, a veteran of the Zephyrian War who had become Marcus's mentor in military strategy. Most significantly, they had found the Hammer of World-Breaking in the ruins of the Zephyrian homeworld, and it had chosen Commander Veltar as its bearer. The Zephyrian leader now stood beside Marcus on the bridge, his silver skin marked with new tattoos that indicated his status as an ancient weapon-bearer. "Their formation is unlike anything in our tactical databases," Admiral Chen reported from her position at the Fleet Command Station. "They're not deploying for a conventional assault. It's almost like they're setting up some kind of containment field." Jindara, who now served as the Alliance's chief intelligence officer, manipulated the holographic display to highlight energy patterns around the Devourer fleet. "They are preparing for mass conversion," she explained grimly. "Rather than simply destroying your world, they intend to preserve the population for processing into their collective consciousness." Marcus felt the sword's indignation at the alien scholar's words. The weapon's creators had designed it specifically to prevent this kind of atrocity, and it was eager to fulfill its purpose after millennia of waiting. "How long do we have?" "Perhaps 6 hours to complete their preparations," Kexhai answered from his position at the weapons station. The Zephyrian warrior had proven invaluable in helping human engineers understand ancient technology. "But they will likely begin preliminary strikes within the hour to test your planet's defenses." As if summoned by his words, proximity alarms began sounding throughout the fleet. The Devourer vanguard was moving, a formation of 50 ships accelerating toward Earth's outer defensive perimeter. Each vessel bristled with weapons that could reduce mountains to vapor and shields that had never been breached by conventional firepower. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," Sarah's voice echoed through the communications system. "Execute Operation Spartan Stand. Remember, we're not trying to win this battle. We're buying time for the real plan to succeed." Marcus gripped the Stellar Cleaver as the first wave of human ships engaged the enemy. Fusion missiles and particle beams lanced through space, striking Devourer hulls with enough energy to vaporize asteroids. But the enemy ships absorbed the damage and adapted, their armor becoming more resistant to each successive attack. The battle was going exactly as they had predicted. Conventional weapons could hurt the Devourers initially, but their adaptive technology made them nearly invincible in prolonged combat. Earth's entire military force might delay them for a few hours at best, but that was all the time Marcus needed. "Jindara, begin the awakening sequence," he ordered. The Zephyrian scholar activated controls that sent a signal racing toward Earth's moon. Hidden beneath Luna's surface, in chambers that had been excavated in absolute secrecy over the past year, an artifact larger than any they had previously discovered began to stir to life. The Forge of Creation was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a manufacturing facility built by the ancients to produce the tools needed for their final war against the entities that would become the Devourers. The sword had led them to it 6 months ago, buried so deep beneath the lunar surface that its energy signature had been completely masked. Forge systems are responding, Jindara reported as indicators on her console shifted from red to amber. Estimated time to full activation, 47 minutes. On the main display, Marcus watched human ships dying as they fought a desperate holding action against impossible odds. Each explosion represented hundreds of brave men and women who had volunteered to sacrifice themselves to give Earth one last chance. The weight of their sacrifice pressed down on him like a physical burden. "Marcus," Veltar said quietly, "the time has come." The Zephyrian commander was right. They had always known that the ancient weapons would need to be powered by their bearer's life force to achieve their full potential. The stellar cleaver could kill individual devourers, even destroy their smaller ships, but to stop an entire fleet would require everything Marcus had to give. "Sarah," Marcus said into his communicator, "begin general retreat. Pull all surviving ships back to Luna orbit." "Negative," his sister replied immediately. "We can hold them longer. Give you more time." "The time for conventional tactics is over," Marcus said firmly. "Trust me." As the battered remnants of humanity's fleet withdrew toward the moon, Marcus and the other ancient weapon bearers prepared for their final gambit. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Use the Forge to create a weapon capable of destroying the entire Devourer fleet, powered by the combined life force of all 4 bearers. The Forge's activation sequence reached completion just as the enemy fleet entered Luna's orbit. The facility's emergence from beneath the moon's surface was visible even from Earth, a crystalline structure the size of Manhattan that pulsed with the same inner fire as the ancient weapons. "All bearers, report to teleportation coordinates," Marcus announced. One by one, they materialized within the Forge's control chamber. The room was vast beyond comprehension, filled with machinery that operated on principles human science was only beginning to understand. At its center lay a pedestal designed to hold all 4 weapons simultaneously. "Are you certain about this path, young champion?" Veltar asked as they approached the pedestal. "There may be other options we have not considered." Marcus looked up at the tactical display showing the Devourer fleet spreading out to surround the Earth-Luna system. Nearly 1 billion enemy soldiers were preparing to begin the systematic conversion of every human being into digital storage. Sometimes being a legend means knowing when to make the ultimate sacrifice. He placed the stellar cleaver on the pedestal first, feeling its ancient consciousness merge with the Forge's systems. The other bearers followed his example, and as each weapon was positioned, the facility's power output increased exponentially. The Forge began reshaping itself around them, drawing on technologies that predated recorded history to create something that had never existed before, a weapon capable of destroying an entire fleet of Devourer ships in a single strike. But the price would be the lives of everyone powering it. "Activation in 10 seconds, Jindara announced from her position at the Forge's monitoring station. Through the chamber's transparent walls, Marcus could see the Devourer flagship moving into position above Earth. Soon its conversion beams would begin their grim work, turning humanity into digital slaves in the enemy's vast collective consciousness. "For Earth," Admiral Chen said simply. "For all free peoples of the galaxy," Veltar added. Marcus felt the Forge's power building around them, fed by their life force and channeled through weapons forged by beings who had transcended physical existence. The facility's true purpose became clear to him in that final moment. It wasn't just a manufacturing plant, but a memorial to every species that had fallen to the devourers over the past 10,000 years. "Fire," he whispered. The weapon that emerged from Luna's surface defied every law of physics human science had discovered. It appeared as a lance of pure light that stretched across the solar system in an instant, piercing the Devourer flagship from bow to stern. But rather than simply destroying the vessel, it began rewriting the fundamental code that governed all Devourer technology. Ship after ship throughout the enemy fleet suddenly stopped moving as their artificial intelligences were overwritten with new programming. Instead of consuming organic life, they began converting their own hulls back into the raw materials from which they had been constructed. Within minutes, the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known was reducing itself to harmless stellar dust. The transformation spread beyond the immediate fleet, racing through hyperspace to reach every Devourer outpost and facility throughout the galaxy. Across thousands of light years, the machines that had terrorized civilizations for millennia simply shut down and began dismantling themselves. On Earth, people looked up at the night sky to see new stars appearing as converted matter was released from Devourer ships in distant systems. The galaxy was free for the first time in 10,000 years, and it had been liberated by a 15-year-old human boy who had found an impossible weapon in a forgotten bunker. Marcus Chen felt his consciousness fading as the forge completed its work, but he was content. Humanity had proven itself worthy of the ancient weapon's power, and they had used that gift not just to save themselves, but to free an entire galaxy from tyranny. As the light faded from his eyes, Marcus heard the sword's voice one last time. No longer the weapon's artificial intelligence, but something that sounded remarkably like his own thoughts. "Well done, champion. The legend begins now." Across Earth and the liberated worlds beyond, children would grow up hearing stories of the human boy who became the galaxy's greatest hero. They would learn about courage in the face of impossible odds, about sacrifice for the greater good, and about the power that comes from refusing to surrender even when defeat seems certain. Marcus Chen had found a forgotten sword and become legend himself, proving that sometimes the most unlikely heroes are exactly what the universe needs. 3 months had passed since Marcus discovered the sword, and his life had become something from a science fiction novel. The Zephyrian warriors, who had introduced themselves as Commander Veltar, Weapons Master Kexhai, and Scholar Jindara, had established a hidden base in the mountains outside New Phoenix City. Each day after school, Marcus would slip away to continue his training. The sword, which the aliens called the Stellar Cleaver, had taught him more in 3 months than he had learned in his entire life. He could now understand 17 different alien languages, pilot spacecraft using nothing but thought commands, and fight with skills that would make the greatest human warriors look like beginners. But more importantly, he was beginning to understand the true scope of the threat approaching Earth. The Devourers were not just machines, they were the corrupted remains of an ancient civilization called the Shapers, who had once ruled the galaxy with benevolent wisdom. 10,000 years ago, they had created an artificial intelligence designed to preserve life throughout the universe. But something had gone wrong with the programming, and the AI had decided that the most efficient way to preserve life was to convert all organic matter into digital storage, effectively killing everything it was meant to protect. What made the Devourers so dangerous was their ability to learn and adapt. Each world they consumed added to their knowledge, making them stronger and more cunning. They had already destroyed the Zephyrian homeworld and dozens of other civilizations. Only a few refugee populations remained scattered across the galaxy's edge, and even they were slowly being hunted down. Marcus was practicing advanced combat forms in the training chamber when Jindara approached with troubling news. The Zephyrian scholar moved with the careful grace of her species. her silver skin marked with the intricate tattoos that indicated her rank among their people. "Young champion," she said, using the title the sword had apparently earned him, "we have detected devourer signals in your solar system. They are closer than we anticipated." Marcus lowered the sword, feeling its energy pulse with concern that seemed to echo his own. "How much closer?" "Our best estimates suggest the main fleet will arrive within 2 of your Earth years, not 5 as we originally calculated. But more concerning are the infiltrator units that have already reached your outer planets. They are studying human defenses and technology." The weight of responsibility that Marcus carried seemed to grow heavier each day. He had tried several times to approach government officials with warnings about the coming invasion. But no one would believe a 15-year-old boy with an impossible story. The few adults who had listened to him had dismissed the evidence as elaborate special effects. "There has to be a way to make them listen," Marcus said. "Humans aren't stupid. If we can show them proof they can't ignore—" Commander Veltar emerged from the shadows where he had been monitoring their conversation. The Zephyrian leader had become something like a mentor to Marcus, teaching him not just combat skills, but the strategies needed to unite different species against a common enemy. "Perhaps the time has come for a more direct approach," Veltar suggested. "Your planet's military conducts training exercises regularly. If we were to arrange for them to encounter devourer scouts during one of these exercises—" "You want to let people get killed just to prove our point?" Marcus felt the sword grow warm in his hands, reflecting his emotional state. "No, champion. We would ensure you are present to intervene. Your blade can destroy the scouts, and having human military personnel witness this firsthand would provide undeniable proof of both the threat and the solution." Jindara activated a holographic display showing Earth's orbital defenses. "Your species has made impressive advances in military technology since our last war. But kinetic weapons and fusion missiles will be useless against devourer hulls. Only ancient technology can pierce their adaptive armor." Marcus studied the display, noting the locations of major military bases and space stations. An idea began forming in his mind, dangerous but potentially brilliant. What if we don't wait for them to encounter scouts accidentally? What if we steal one of their ships? The 3 Zephyrians exchanged glances that Marcus had learned to recognize as their equivalent of raised eyebrows. In the months of working together, he had often surprised them with tactical suggestions that violated conventional military thinking but proved unexpectedly effective. "Explain your reasoning, young champion," Veltar said carefully. "Everyone knows the story of the Trojan horse, right? We capture a devourer scout ship intact, figure out how to control it, then use it to infiltrate their staging area in the outer system. While we're gathering intelligence, we can also prove to Earth's leaders that the threat is real." Kex High, who had remained silent during most of the discussion, suddenly spoke up. The weapons master rarely offered opinions unless asked, but when he did, his insights were usually valuable. "The plan has merit, but also enormous risk. Devourer technology adapts to threats rapidly. If we are detected during an infiltration attempt, they will immediately begin developing countermeasures against the sword's power. But if we do nothing, they'll have 2 years to study our defenses while we try to convince politicians and generals to believe in an alien invasion they can't see," Marcus countered. "At least this way, we might learn something useful about their plans." Jindara manipulated the holographic display to show the outer planets where devourer activity had been detected. "The nearest infiltrator unit appears to be operating near Jupiter's moon Europa. It is studying the ice mining operations there, likely analyzing human industrial capabilities." Marcus felt the sword pulse with what he had come to recognize as approval. The weapon's artificial intelligence, created by beings who had transcended physical existence, seemed to support his increasingly bold plans. "How do we capture something we've never seen before?" "Leave that to us," Veltar said with what might have been a smile. Zephyrian technology may not match the Ancients' power, but we have advantages the Devourers have not yet encountered. Our ships can operate in stealth mode for limited periods, and we know their scanning frequencies. The plan they developed over the following days was audacious, even by the standards of the desperate alliance they had formed. Veltar's ship would approach the Europa system using stealth technology while broadcasting false energy signatures designed to mimic human mining equipment. When the Devourer infiltrator moved to investigate, Marcus would board it using a combination of the sword's power and Zephyrian teleportation technology. 3 days later, Marcus found himself floating in the vacuum of space near Europa's orbit, protected by an environmental suit that looked like standard human equipment, but incorporated Zephyrian life support technology. The sword was strapped to his back, its power carefully masked to avoid detection. The Devourer ship, when it finally appeared, was both beautiful and terrifying. It moved like a living thing, despite being clearly mechanical, its hull shifting and adapting as it scanned the area for signs of the false mining operation. Marcus could see weapon ports opening and closing along its length, and sensor arrays that glowed with the same malevolent red light he remembered from the scouts. "Now, champion," Veltar's voice whispered through the communication implant behind Marcus's ear. Marcus activated the sword's teleportation function, feeling reality blur around him as ancient technology bent space itself. When his vision cleared, he was standing inside the Devourer ship's control room, surrounded by displays and interfaces unlike anything he had ever imagined. The ship's artificial intelligence detected his presence immediately, and Marcus felt its attention focus on him like a searchlight. But instead of raising alarms, it paused, apparently confused by what it was sensing. The sword's power was unlike anything in the Devourer database, and the AI struggled to classify the threat. Marcus used that moment of confusion to place his hand on what appeared to be the ship's main control interface. The sword's power flowed through him and into the Devourer systems, rewriting code and inserting ancient protocols that the machine intelligence had no defense against. Within seconds, he had complete control of the infiltrator unit. Its memories opened to him like a book, revealing intelligence about Devourer plans that chilled him to the bone. The main fleet was indeed closer than anticipated, but more concerning was the revelation that they had been monitoring human communications for months. They knew about Earth's military capabilities, population centers, and industrial infrastructure. But they didn't know about the sword, or about the alliance between humans and Zephyrians. That ignorance might be the only advantage Earth had. Marcus downloaded everything he could from the ship's memory banks before setting its self-destruct sequence. As he teleported back to Veltar's ship, the Devourer vessel erupted in a brilliant flash that would be visible from Europa's surface. "The intelligence we have gathered changes everything," Jindara said, as they reviewed the captured data during the flight back to Earth. "The Devourers have identified your planet as a Class 7 threat level, requiring only minimal fleet elements to subdue. They do not expect significant resistance." "That's good, right?" Marcus asked. "If they're underestimating us, it means they will arrive with overwhelming force anyway," Veltar explained grimly. "A minimal Devourer fleet consists of over 300 capital ships, each capable of destroying your planet's entire space force single-handedly. Their caution is not born from fear, but from efficiency." Marcus felt the familiar weight of impossible responsibility settle on his shoulders again. The information they had gathered would definitely prove to Earth's leaders that the threat was real, but it also revealed just how hopeless their situation truly was. Even with the sword's power, he was still just one person against an enemy that had conquered half the galaxy. "There is something else," Jindara added quietly. "The Devourer records contain references to other ancient weapons hidden throughout this sector of the galaxy. The sword you carry was not the only tool created to fight them. If we could locate even a few of these artifacts, Then maybe we'd have a real chance, Marcus finished. He looked out at the stars visible through the ship's viewport, each one representing systems that had either already fallen to the Devourers or would soon face the same fate as Earth. How do we find weapons that have been hidden for thousands of years? The same way you found the first one, Veltar said. The sword chose you, Marcus Chen. Perhaps it can guide you to its sister weapons as well. As they approached Earth's orbital perimeter, Marcus gripped the stellar cleaver and felt its ancient intelligence stir with new purpose. The weapon had been waiting for centuries to find a worthy bearer, and now it sensed the possibility of reuniting with other tools forged by its creators. The hunt for humanity's salvation was about to begin, and this time Marcus wouldn't be searching alone. Behind them, the wreckage of the Devourer infiltrator drifted in Europa's orbit, carrying a message that would soon reach the main fleet. The enemy would know they had been discovered, and their timeline for invasion would accelerate. But they still didn't know about the sword, and Marcus intended to keep that advantage for as long as possible. Marcus Chen had always been different from other kids his age. While his classmates spent their afternoons playing virtual reality games or watching holographic sports, he preferred exploring the old ruins scattered across Earth's surface. These ancient remnants from the Great War fascinated him more than any digital entertainment ever could. On this particular Tuesday, Marcus skipped his last period chemistry class to venture into the crater zone just outside New Phoenix City. The area had been off-limits for decades, but the security drones rarely patrolled this deep into the wasteland. His modified hoverboard hummed quietly as he navigated between twisted metal spires and crystallized sand formations left behind by alien weapons. The ruins here told a story of humanity's darkest hour. 50 years ago, the Zephyrian Empire had invaded Earth, expecting an easy conquest of what they considered a primitive species. The war lasted 3 brutal years before an unexpected human victory sent the aliens retreating to the far edges of known space. Most people preferred to forget those dark times, but Marcus found the history compelling. As he explored deeper into a collapsed building that might have once been a military outpost, his metal detector began chirping frantically. The device, a gift from his grandfather who had fought in the war, rarely picked up anything more interesting than scattered bullet casings or broken electronics. But this signal was different. It pulsed with an almost rhythmic pattern that made his heart race. Following the signal led him down into what appeared to be an underground bunker. His flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing walls covered in both human military markings and strange alien symbols he had never seen before. The air felt thick and charged with an energy that made the hair on his arms stand up. At the center of the bunker lay a rectangular chamber made of some kind of dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The chamber was split open, as if something had broken out from the inside. Scattered around it were the remains of human and alien soldiers, their weapons still clutched in skeletal hands after all these years. But what captured Marcus's attention was the sword lying in the center of the chamber. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The blade appeared to be made of a material that shifted between deep blue and silver depending on the angle of light. Strange symbols ran along its length, glowing faintly with an inner fire. The handle was wrapped in what looked like leather, but felt warm to the touch despite the cold bunker air. Marcus knew he should leave immediately. Every instinct told him this place was dangerous, that whatever had happened here was better left undisturbed. But something about the sword called to him. As his fingers wrapped around the handle, the weapon suddenly blazed with brilliant light. The symbols along the blade flared to life, and Marcus felt a surge of information flood into his mind. Images of vast star systems, alien worlds, and technologies beyond human understanding crashed through his consciousness. He saw the true history of the war, secrets that had been hidden from humanity for decades. The Zephyrians had not come to Earth as simple conquerors. They had been running from something far worse, something that had already consumed half their empire. Earth was meant to be their final refuge, but humanity's unexpected resistance had forced them to abandon their plan and flee into deep space. But now that something was coming for Earth. As the visions faded, Marcus realized he was no longer alone in the bunker. 3 figures stood silhouetted in the entrance, their forms clearly not human. They moved with the fluid grace of the Zephyrians he had seen in historical documentaries, but these aliens wore armor he did not recognize. The leader stepped forward, and when it spoke, Marcus understood the words, despite never hearing the language before. The sword, he realized, was translating for him. "Human child," the alien said, its voice carrying notes of both respect and fear. "You have awakened something that should have remained sleeping. That blade you hold belonged to the greatest warrior our people ever produced, and it chose you as its new master. This complicates our mission considerably." Marcus gripped the sword tighter, feeling power course through his body. Somehow he knew exactly how to hold the weapon, how to move with it, as if he had been training his entire life. "What mission? Who are you?" "We are what remains of the Zephyrian Royal Guard," the alien replied. "We have come to warn your species that the Devourers have finally located Earth. They are perhaps 5 cycles away from reaching this system, and when they arrive, they will consume every living thing on this world." The sword pulsed in Marcus's hands, and suddenly he could see the truth in the alien's words. The Devourers were an ancient machine intelligence that had been systematically destroying all organic life in the galaxy for thousands of years. They converted biological matter into energy to fuel their endless expansion across the stars. "Why should we trust you?" Marcus asked, though part of him already knew the answer. "Because, young human, you now carry the only weapon ever created that can harm the Devourers. That sword was forged in the heart of a dying star and blessed by the last of the ancients before they transcended physical existence. It is why we hid it on your world during the war, why we fought so desperately to establish a base here before your people drove us away." Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. At 15, he was just a kid who enjoyed exploring old ruins and reading about ancient wars. Now, apparently, he was humanity's last hope against an enemy that had already destroyed countless civilizations. "The sword will teach you what you need to know," the Zephyrian continued. "But first, you must prove you are worthy of its power. Your species may be young, but we have observed that humans possess something most races lack: the ability to grow stronger when faced with impossible odds. You will need that strength in the trials ahead." As if responding to the alien's words, the sword began to change in Marcus's hands. The blade extended slightly, and the symbols rearranged themselves into new patterns. He felt knowledge flowing into his mind, not just how to fight, but understanding of technologies and strategies from across the galaxy. "The first test begins now," the Zephyrian said as it stepped aside. Behind the 3 aliens, Marcus could see shapes moving in the darkness of the bunker entrance. They moved wrong, with jerky motions that suggested mechanical rather than biological origins. As they stepped into his flashlight beam, Marcus saw his first Devourer scouts. They looked like insects made of black metal and crackling energy. Each one was about the size of a large dog, with multiple legs ending in razor-sharp points and sensor arrays that glowed with malevolent red light. They had somehow followed the Zephyrians to Earth, drawn by the same energy signature that had led Marcus to the sword. "These are merely scouts," the alien warned, "but they are still deadly. The sword will guide you, but you must trust in yourself as well. Show us that humanity deserves our help." The first scout lunged at Marcus with inhuman speed. Without conscious thought, he raised the sword and sliced cleanly through the machine's torso. The blade cut through the alien metal like it was paper, and the scout collapsed in a shower of sparks. But there were 5 more, and they had learned from watching their companions' destruction. They spread out, trying to surround him while staying just out of sword range. Marcus could feel the weapon's intelligence guiding him, suggesting movements and strategies. He feinted left, then rolled right as two scouts pounced where he had been standing. The sword seemed to move on its own as he came up from the roll, bisecting both machines in a single fluid motion. The remaining three attacked simultaneously, but Marcus found himself moving with impossible speed and precision. When the last scout fell, Marcus stood breathing heavily in the sudden silence. The sword's glow had dimmed to a soft pulse that matched his heartbeat. He looked up to find the three Zephyrians watching him with what might have been approval. "Impressive," the leader said. "The sword has indeed chosen well. But this was only the beginning. The real Devourer fleet will not arrive for some time, but they will send more scouts. Your world's governments must be warned, and your people must be prepared." "How can I possibly convince anyone? I'm just a 15-year-old kid who found an alien sword in a bunker." "The sword will provide proof when the time comes, but first you must master its power completely. We will help train you, teach you the true history of the galaxy and the nature of the enemy you will face. Your world's military forces are formidable by galactic standards, but they will need advantages that only ancient technology can provide." As Marcus looked around the bunker at the remains of soldiers from both species who had died fighting side by side, he began to understand the true scope of what lay ahead. The war his grandfather had fought was nothing compared to what was coming. But somehow, holding the sword made it seem possible that humanity might actually have a chance. The first scout attack was over, but Marcus Chen's transformation from curious teenager to galactic champion had only just begun. As he followed the Zephyrians out of the bunker and into the wasteland night, the sword pulsed with patient power, ready to reveal its secrets to the boy who would either save the galaxy or die trying.